Hello, everybody, and welcome to this special session by Just One Giant Lab. Today, we are going to celebrate Citizen Science Month and would like to highlight examples of community science initiatives that connect communities and that connect people in the research and innovation process. So we are lucky to have three speakers. We have Frederick J.C. Damte from Forest Aid Ghana. We have Sean Lynch from Open Litter Map, based out of Ireland, and we have Patrick Campbell, who is part of Just One Giant Lab in the US. So just to give you the structure of today's program, we will be having project highlights from our three speakers. They will share with us initiatives that they are involved in the citizen science space. Each speaker will share about their projects within 10 to 15 minutes. And after their presentations, we get to ask them different questions about citizen science and explore what this approach to research and innovation really means and what it can bring to the table as far as creating solutions to problems are concerned. So just to introduce Frederick, he's an applied ecologist whose work is focused on understanding ecosystem processes and patterns in landscape and altered landscapes. He's worked principally with basic school children and forest fringe community members who act as citizen scientists. He's the founder of Forest Aid Ghana, an NGO that focuses on sustainable management of natural resources. We have Sean. Sean is an avid GIS mapper. He's the founder of Open Litter Map. And using OpenStreetMap, he and his community have been able a community of more than 6,000 contributors have been able to upload 250,000 photos and almost 500,000 tags. Recently, he's also been working on the Littercoin reward, which is the first token reward for producing geographic information and collecting data around the environment. So I'm hoping that in today's session, we'll get to understand exactly what this means. Our third speaker is Patrick Campbell. He'll be joining us shortly. He is a public interest technologist who focuses on using tools like data science, open source, peer-to-peer technologies in addressing global issues, so for example, climate change. He works for Innovate Inc. as a GIS analyst, and also he's a fellow with Just One Giant Lab, where he started the Conservation Giant Lab, which is looking at an open community-driven approach to solving conservation and climate change issues. So I'm going to hand over straight to our first speaker, Frederick, to take us through the activities of Forest Aid Ghana. Over to you, Frederick.
Thanks, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are watching from. Yeah, like Mr. Gamale has already introduced Frederick J.C. Damte, an ecologist, meaning I do basic and applied ecological research in different ecosystems, such as forests, such as arable fields, such as post-spine landscapes and other systems. So over the years, I've been working on several forestry-related projects whereby I usually engage forest fringe community members in different afforestation programs. Some of these programs include the agroforestry system, whereby we try to build the capacity of community members in tree planting activities, whilst at the same time interplanting, helping them to interplant the trees with their food crops for them to meet both their food and energy needs. Aside this, I've been also focusing on building the capacity of community members who do not have any formal knowledge in environmental conservation. So I call them the citizen scientists. And then these are basically the school children, farmers, and then the general public. In fact, anyone with an interest in conservation or anyone with an interest to perform basic scientific research. So what I try to do is I teach them the basic competency in biodiversity research. The concept is I try to give them the basic knowledge how to carry out this biodiversity research so that they will appreciate what they have, and then later on they can be stewards of their own environment. So I do this with colleagues, and then together we founded this Forest Aid Ghana Limited, which is a non-governmental organization. So apart from this citizen science project, yeah, we work with farmers, we work with policymakers, and then we also work with other researchers. So our core areas includes community engagement, vertebrate and invertebrate conservation and research. We also do sustainable forest management, sustainable agriculture. We are into climate change, and then creation of alternative livelihood schemes for forest fringe communities. Alternative livelihood schemes for forest fringe communities, because we realize most community members live closer to the forest, it's closer to them. So that means they depend on the forest 100% for almost all their livelihoods. We know the implications, deforestation. So the idea is to take them out of the forest, give them something else to do so that they will not depend entirely on the forest. So with our basic school children, we don't leave them out of this. We take them out of the classrooms at appropriate time and teach them how to literally dirty their hands. So meaning we teach them how to work in the soil. We teach them how to plant trees. We teach them how to measure trees. We teach them how to sample bugs in their backyard. And then we teach them, we also explore to them and then let them feel or appreciate the value of some of this forest. So this is a project we recently did. Permit me to highlight some of the results we had from this project. This is a citizen scientists in diversity assessment and then conservation. So we basically use these school kids. We train them, we explored, we explain to them how it works to work as a scientist, and then we hope they become stewards of the environment when they grow up. So this is an abandoned gravel pit. Some years ago, this area was mined. We took off the topsoil, and then we also took off the gravels to construct a major road in Ghana. And then it was left for so many years unattended to. So later on, a mining company went in, did some kind of earthworks, and then started planting grasses and then cover crops. Later on, they also planted both indigenous tree species and then exotic tree species with the aim of creating an ecosystem that could mimic the surrounding forest, or that could provide basic ecosystem goods and services to the community. So this is the current state of the restored forest. The mining company has officially handed over to the community, and then now this is where our work as citizen scientists starts. So the community now have access to this forest. It's a very big forest. They get all their livelihood needs from this forest, being it firewood, being it medicine, being it wild food, game meat, everything. So what is lacking here is the skills for these community members to conduct basic ecological assessment, or to conduct basic biodiversity assessment. This, if they are able to do, will help them with the management, because if they know what is in the forest, then they can already plan conservation strategies, or they can already plan management actions to protect the forest. So myself and my team, we went around, started recruiting people from the same community, from different households, with the aim of training them to become stewards of this forest. So the school kids were also not left out, because we wanted to catch them young. We wanted to introduce them to this concept so that when they grow, they will not depart from it. So we also included the school kids. And basically, this is what we did. We explained to them how to plant trees. Of course, they know how to plant trees, but in the communal way, we demonstrated it to them. We also explained to them how to harvest or how to sample insects in the forest using the beating tray. Some were also exposed to how to measure dead woods, how to set up pitfall traps, how to measure diameter. And then the community members, most of them also received training on how to use the GPS to demarcate their community forest. We explained to them how to take even canopy openness measurements. We also explained to them how to measure the diameter of trees and other stuffs. So these are some of the, when we were done with this, we had a lot of samples from our pitfall traps. So we took these samples to the laboratory. We created a laboratory in their school room, in one of their classrooms, and then we fitted it with microscopes. So we brought the samples in, and then we wanted them to explore for themselves and then try to identify some of the insects they are familiar with. And the good thing is they knew most of the insects, and then they knew the role some of these insects were playing in the forest. Some acting as pollinators, some acting as decomposers, the spiders acting as natural enemies of pests of crops. They knew all these things. So this was just affirmation. This was just to confirm already what they know, and to also boost their morale in some of this research. So this is just a brief overview of some of the samples we had. And then we also tried to capture them. We had a reference forest 7, a nearby forest 7 as a reference site. And then if we even want to compare, we could already see that the restore site is already doing well, a bit well in terms of numbers, in terms of abundance, when we compare to the reference forest. Of course, it's reference forest, we had a lot of numbers in them. But when we critically look at some groups like the spiders, the arani, they are more than the reference site. And then when we look at the orthopterans, that's the grasshoppers and the crickets, yeah, we recorded so much in the restore site than the reference forest. So the link below, in the link below, you'll be able to find the full report from this activity. So feel free to check this link. I'll put it in the comment section later on. Feel free to check it at your own convenient time. So yeah, Rufus sponsored this work financially, and then the Department of Ecology, Brandenburg University of Technology, also resources logistically. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Frederick. So if anybody has a question for Frederick, please feel free to put the question in the chat. In the meantime, we'll go on to our second speaker, Sean. Sean, kindly turn on your video to share with us the work that he does with the open data map.
Hi, everybody. My name's Sean Lynch. I'm from Ireland. I'm the founder and developer of Open Litter Map. So Open Litter Map is a global, open source, open data, interactive data collection experience of the world's litter and plastic pollution. So all around the world, hundreds of millions of tons of plastic is going into the ocean. And yes, we need to clean it up, but we don't yet have much data on how badly littered our streets, our world, our beaches, our communities, our towns, our rural areas, our streams, or rivers, or hospitals, or schools, or playgrounds, how badly littered they are. And we need that data to create visibility. And like Frederick was doing amazingly, teaching people about the environment, we need to teach them about how much litter and plastic pollution is out there. And that education is a very important way to try and fix the problem. Open Litter Map is entirely open source. That means that anyone can view all of the code. So every citizen, every student, every researcher, every government and university in the world has the same access to all of the code to generate the app and the website. And everybody has equal and unrestricted rights to download the data and use it. That's very important, particularly for pollution, because now everyone has transparent access to the same data. So when knowledge about pollution is produced, that data that characterizes how badly polluted the world is, for example, how many millions of tons of plastic are going into the ocean, is also open for interrogation and review. So around the world, hundreds of millions of people have been equipped with these incredibly powerful devices that we call phones. But our devices are not just able to take phone calls, they're also able to record our location, our GPS position around the world. And the camera can be used to make factual observations about your surroundings. So I decided to take this unprecedented human ability of harnessing this data collection capacity and apply it to litter and plastic pollution. So Open Litter Map was inspired by OpenStreetMap in the background. That's that map there, that tiles. I'm sure you're familiar with Google Maps. That's a product that's owned by Google. But the OpenStreetMap is also open source and open data, and it's owned by the OpenStreetMap community. So I was inspired by OpenStreetMap to apply the same open source values to litter and plastic pollution. That's how OpenLitterMap was born. When I was introduced to OpenStreetMap, I went looking for the same platform for litter and plastic pollution, but it didn't exist. So that's how OpenLitterMap was born. I then taught myself how to code, and it's still in development, but it's getting better every day. I started my research about 15 years ago, and it took more than 90 applications. But last year, I got my first funding, but it didn't come from any traditional source. Cryptocurrency has given me $50,000 of funding to build this app and involve people with citizen science. That's from the cryptocurrency Cardano. And what they do is they have a system in place where every time a transaction is spent on their network, and if someone sends a cryptocurrency to another person, there's a small tax, and this tax accumulates in an account, what we call a smart contract. And then all of the people holding the cryptocurrency get to vote on how that tax money is spent. So we all pay tax, but decisions are done by a very small number of politicians who decide what kind of science can be allowed in the universities. And not many of the universities are doing science on how badly polluted the planet is. So science funding has failed to protect the environment, but now it's been disrupted by cryptocurrency, because instead of just a small number of experts who get to determine where the grant money goes, now, like getting upvoted on Reddit, the cryptocurrency community has developed new systems where you just vote, yes, I like this proposal, and you get access to the money. So I got my first $50,000 this way, and there's more funding coming here from citizen science too, and we'll get back to that. And as a reward for using my app, we earn Littercoin, which I'll finish on. That's the first cryptocurrency rewarded for collecting data about the environment. I've got other partners as well. We've got a corporate partner, Engine Lease Finance. They're an aircraft leasing company headquartered in Ireland, and they gave their global workforce a half day from work to pick up litter and record their positive environmental impact with society. And they're helping, fund the app and use it as well here in Ireland. So in 2008, I was introduced to GIS mapping, and I thought this software was incredible. And I was wondering, how could I use this incredible GIS application using real world data, which to me looked like a game for the world? How could I combine that with my interest in gaming? And what kind of result would I get if I just took these two abstract concepts of GIS and I like these computer games? If I put them together, what kind of new ideas could I come up with? So I started thinking, and back in 2008, this was the pre-smartphone and iPhone era. We still had like Nokias, and we were texting each other. We didn't have the luxury of everyone having a data collector like we do today. So I started thinking, what could I use this GIS technology for? What kind of data could I start collecting on? And I thought, well, what about dumping and littering, which is everywhere? There's this area where I live, and it's just plagued by dumping and littering and antisocial behavior. And I thought, if I could bring a GIS or a GPS instrument out here and record my location and combine that then with photographs, I would have a really powerful tool to educate the local community about this problem, that people don't want to look at, but through a digital device, it just becomes more approachable. And then I'd have data to actually work with the city council to try and get it fixed. And after I realized you could map dumping, I started realizing you could also map litter, which was everywhere. The cigarette butts and plastic bottles, broken glass, that litter nearly every corner of the world. Every step that you take, at least here in Ireland, is filthy. And I thought this would be a really powerful educational tool. Traditionally, citizen science has focused almost exclusively on biodiversity. This is a map of the native hedgehog in Ireland, where I live, and in the top left, an image of the invasive Japanese knotwood. Both of native and invasive species can be crowdsourced by citizen scientists. And going back into the publication since the 1970s, citizen science has had a very strong relationship with biodiversity. But biodiversity mapping without training is not that easy, because I haven't seen a hedgehog in 10 years, and if I wasn't taught by another expert like Frederick about how to classify these bugs, I wouldn't know how to do it. So biodiversity mapping can be done by citizen science, and we need to get society better at doing that. And there's a huge knowledge gap about how to collect data on biodiversity that's not being taught as well in schools as it should. So biodiversity mapping is not that easy. It's not that easy to go out and actually find these species. And then even if you can find them, it's not that easy sometimes without the proper training to identify them appropriately. But what has a much lower barrier to entry that anyone can do is mapping litter and plastic pollution and waste, which is not only everywhere. Just look outside or walk around the corner. And just like here in Ireland, I'm sure wherever you are globally, you will find cigarette butts and increasingly face masks, dog fouling, pet waste, dump sites, plastic bottles, broken glass. It's a hazard for kids playing in the street and for people's pets and other wild animals. And as well as of the hundreds of millions of tons of plastic that modern society produces on an annual basis, is now plaguing the streets. So biodiversity mapping, not that easy, but litter mapping can be done by anyone because you don't have to travel very far to find it. And everybody knows what it is. Everyone knows there's one face mask in this photo and there's one plastic bottle, or there's 10 cigarette butts in another photo. So litter mapping is quite accessible, and we're trying to make it fun. We're trying to turn cleaning the planet into a game and make it fun and easy so that anyone can just take their device and produce new knowledge about how badly polluted the world is. And citizen science is incredibly powerful because traditionally knowledge about the world and what we know was produced in a very top-down way. You had to get a study for 10 years, become a PhD, get a job in a university, and only then could you produce knowledge, and you had the right to collect data. You were a qualified scientist, and you had basically the universities had a near monopoly on what types of knowledge were allowed to be produced, and it lived in a very small academic bubble because you needed a PhD to read some of these papers and to understand what was happening in the world. So knowledge became really siloed and exclusive, and the knowledge systems of the world failed to protect the environment. If they did a better job, we wouldn't have the climate crisis and the plastic crisis like we do now. So this expert-led approach to science has imposed very narrow limitations on the scientific method. Now what we're witnessing is that all around the world, hundreds of millions of people have been equipped with these incredibly powerful devices that we call phones. They're actually data collectors. Yes, they can make phone calls, but these devices that we carry around everywhere, more fundamental than being a phone, is they are data collection and processing units. We have learned how to use this to share information on social media, and that's very powerful. And it was the facilitation of information sharing on social media that caused a huge awakening of global pollution in the early 2010s. And so we've learned how to use our devices to share information, but we haven't yet scratched the surface of what using our devices to collect real observations about the world is capable of. And that's what citizen science is. Citizen science is climate action, and it's about involving people not in a faraway environment on a tropical beach somewhere, but literally in their backyard and in their local community, because the environment is everywhere and we're a part of that. And you'll find that no matter where you go, you'll be able to find litter and plastic pollution, and you can be a citizen scientist and you can create knowledge and open knowledge about the world that's accessible by everyone using open tools to do it as well. So I'm sure now you've known that plastic pollution is a huge problem in the oceans and everywhere else around the world as well. And there's estimated about 8 to 12 million tons of plastic that's going into the oceans every year. If you break that down by day, it's about 20-something thousand tons, and every hour, it's about 900 tons are estimated to be going into the oceans every hour. So yes, we need to pick this up and have better systems at dealing with it, but we need data, we need baseline data to know exactly how badly polluted is the planet. And our knowledge about how badly polluted it is, I would suggest it's significantly underdeveloped and ripe for disruption, because all of these people around the world have these devices And we now need to start encouraging people to collect as much data as possible to try and get a really good picture about, well, how much plastic is out there? How much is it going to cost to clean it up? Where do we need to focus our efforts? Where is it coming from? Who's profiting from producing this stuff? And how can they be included in a conversation? Because if we don't deal with this fast, all this plastic is going to start breaking up, and it's going to keep going into the ocean. And the situation with plastic pollution is going to get exponentially worse if the current trends continue. So scientists are trying to figure this out, like where is it and where is it coming from? But the figures that I mentioned, they don't have much data on plastic pollution. What they do is they take population density. There's 100 million people living in this zone, and they combine it with whatever waste management metrics they get from governments, and they come up with these numbers based on population density and waste management metrics. And these are always or commonly cited in the media, but very little data exists to actually underpin that. And if you read these papers, the authors recognize that there's large uncertainties with these numbers because of a lack of data. And the only way we're going to get that now is with citizen science, because that expert-led approach hasn't worked, and that's not going to change. So now we need to get society better at collecting data. So that's what we're trying to do with Open Litter Map. You can download our app for iOS and Android, and all of that code is open source. And we're not just trying to encourage people to map litter, but because it's open source, we're trying to build a really good starting point so that if anyone else is interested in citizen science, they can download our app, they can change litter to bugs or trees or landmines or whatever they're interested in, and have a really good starting point to start collecting data on whatever it is they want. So we believe that instead of locking science away and only certain people can do it, everyone should have the same and equal right to be a part of science, because open science, open code, and open data, that's the real science. And anything else is people trying to run away with the data and monopolize it and control the narrative. That's a very dangerous thing to happen for something like pollution or climate or biodiversity. So it's very important that not only should we embrace citizen science, but also try to guide or have guidance by open source values and open science. So we're trying to make it easy, right? You take a photo, you tag what litter you see, you know, in this image, you'll select face mask 1, and you upload it. And you can also create a team, be it a remote team with your friends online, or community, or whoever you work for, or your local team, your friends, your school, your company, your local community group, and you can compete against all the other teams in the world. So I mentioned that I got my first funding from cryptocurrency, and they gave me funding for this token that I'm currently been developing for a few years. It's not easy to make cryptocurrencies, but it's called Littercoin, and it's the first token rewarded for doing citizen science. So as you use this app and collect data about litter, you're earning this cryptocurrency called Littercoin. But it's not like any other cryptocurrency that you've ever heard of, like Bitcoin or anything else. First of all, it's the first token rewarded for collecting data about the environment or doing citizen science, or more officially, producing geographic information about the world. So inspired by Bitcoin runs this energy intensive process called proof of work. But what we did is we took that principle of doing the work, but applied it to citizen science. And that's how Littercoin was born. But unlike normal money, which can be spent anywhere, so normal money is produced by governments who had a monopoly on the production of money until Bitcoin came along and separated the rules of who's allowed to produce money. Bitcoin separated money and state. So the rules of money have changed, but traditional money has been accumulated by the fossil fuel industry and the plastics industry, and it's been disproportionately given in terms of financing and access to money and capital. Traditional forms of money that we know have been disproportionately given to those who destroy the environment and the climate. So what I thought was, well, wouldn't it be interesting if we had a type of money that instead of could be spent anywhere, what about if it could only be spent doing good things for the environment? Like you could never buy it to shop with something that had plastic. You could only spend it in zero waste stores. So that's the vision for Littercoin, is that you earn this token for doing the work. And then as a reward, you get to continue to help fix the environment by getting discounted access to your local zero waste store. So you visit somewhere with your jar, you fill up with rice or pasta, and you're out of there with no plastic, and you get a small discount for doing that. So that's why I call Littercoin climate currency. It's the first climate currency, I believe, because it's the only currency that I know of that can only be spent in the climate economy, not just the circular economy where there's a plastic loop. We're going to turn that off. Littercoin fixes this. So it's climate currency that can only be spent in the climate economy. Under what we do is we green list certain zero waste stores to begin with, and then we can look at charity shops and local community stakeholders and things like that. But the initial vision is zero waste stores. And unlike all the other crypto crap, Littercoin won't be listed on any exchange. People are always asking me, what's the price? Where can I trade it? What exchange will it be listed on? And the answer is zero. It's a non-tradable token. We're not going to list it anywhere because crypto has turned into a giant Ponzi scheme where people trade speculatively, which this token against the other. And I don't want Littercoin to be anything like that. We're not going to list it on any exchange, and it's only going to be spendable, in zero waste stores in the climate economy. And as I said, it opens up important questions about what is money. So why do governments have a monopoly on producing unlimited amounts of money every year? What if money could be created by people doing good things for the environment? So cryptocurrencies have allowed us to question the rules of what is money, where can it be spent, how is it generated? And I just think it's an interesting question to ask, that what is money and why not? Why can't it be produced by people doing good things for the environment and can only be spent under certain circumstances doing other good things for the environment, like shopping in zero waste stores? Not only is litter and plastic pollution a huge environmental burden, it's also a huge taxpayer burden. Here in Ireland, over 85 million euros was spent last year on litter and street cleaning services. That's nearly 162 euros that we're spending here in Ireland picking up litter every minute, and a total of €0 has been spent on the development of citizen science. So governments have access to this government money, and they're not using it to promote the development of citizen science. But interestingly, new forms of money are emerging, like cryptocurrency. And although governments have politicized science and they're not interested in exposing the rot and the waste produced by these major global corporations, so governments have no funding to actually fix this problem, whereas cryptocurrency is looking at this as a huge opportunity to provide funding for citizen science. And I know that there will be more funding in Cardano for citizen science, so I'll link that in the chat. But it's an interesting time to be involved in citizen science because there's new forms of funding becoming available, and governments have already proved that they're not capable of fixing the climate crisis. So we need new forms of rules and finance and government and governance that will allow people to work together open source globally and democratically. A few examples of other citizen science applications that I'm working on. I also run another tool called druglitter.info, and we collect data on drug-related litter, like sharps and injecting paraphernalia that's accumulating in urban centers here in Ireland. And I've got about 5 years of continuous data on that. So when government needs to open a new service, like a safe injecting facility where people can go and consume their drugs without being homeless and without living on the street and without having to share potentially contaminated paraphernalia with others, they can go to some of these centers are opening around the world. But when the center opens, it's going to change how drugs are consumed in society. Where do people move? Where do social workers need to focus, and how does funding need to change? And where do we need more bins, for example? And we have the data now to guide an objective public dialogue, and that's partly done by citizen scientists, but it's another similar tool that can be done by citizen scientists. Recently, I was also approached by a colleague now in Ukraine who had to flee his country, and he was interested, like, how can I get a really good data collection app and start mapping landmines and other remnants of war in his community back home? So within 24 hours, we forked the Open Litter Map code, and this new project, not online yet, it's called Mine Free Ukraine, is about to launch in the next 24 hours. And we're going to empower people to start collecting data in their communities about the effects of war. So that's also in development. Is my new project called Litter Week, and this will be for schools. You take the Litter Week challenge, and I have funding there from the cryptocurrency people to do that. And in terms of Africa, Open Letter Map has small adoption in Africa, but it's growing. I would encourage all of you guys to check out my friend here, Pike in Malawi, and they're using our app to map waste dump sites in their local community. He's also got a GoFundMe. If you have a few euros or dollars or Bitcoins to spare, check out Pike and his GoFundMe, and they're one of our super users using the app, and he's doing a lot of work. And they're teaching other people as well about how to use our app, how to do citizen science, how to collect data about their environment. 2 years ago, we also had another group in Malawi use our app, and they got funding from the Open Knowledge Foundation. They got a grant of about $500 to run an event to teach people how to use Open Litter Map and create data on litter and plastic pollution in their community. And my last slide is this one. It's just to show that if you keep our global map open, there's live updates. So you'll see all around the world that people are contributing data to Open Litter Map nearly every day. There's about 700 photos being uploaded every day. So if you keep the global map open, hopefully you'll see some live events. And if you upload, I'll probably be watching your live events. Sign up, because I always have this open. So keep this open as a background tab if you want to see more about what we're doing. I know I went over time. Thanks very much for listening to me. I could talk about this all day, but I'll have to stop.
Yes, thank you very much, Sean. Very passionate contribution about dealing with plastics and also with the innovative approach. In JOGL Africa, we are highly interested in addressing the plastic pollution problem. So I think that there might be some opportunity to collaborate extensively with Open Litter Map on this, and it's really exciting work. I can see on the map there's a bit of activity in East Africa, but not as much in West Africa. So we'll see how to deal with that. So our third speaker is Patrick Campbell, who is a fellow from Just One Giant Lab. He actually gave a presentation earlier in the year talking about conservation. How do we make conservation more open, and specifically about the Conservation Giants Lab initiative that he's leading at JOGL. So I'm just going to play a short snippet of that presentation. I think it should be about 5 minutes, talking specifically about the Conservation Giants Lab.
Response to the climate crisis that's truly effective and devise solutions that rival those of any other sector of society. It's an egoless space where anyone and everyone can contribute to conservation and climate goals. And it's a hub for collaboration and sharing of knowledge and resources. So instead of kind of the traditional siloed approach, we're providing this kind of single stream repository for collective knowledge and resources, all the resources being collected together to support kind of the work of the entire community. And if you've been involved with JOGL for any amount of time, you've probably seen this slide before. This is one of my favorite slides that they share. It just kind of really captures the kind of vision that we have here, which is that currently the contributors to published science is just a tiny fraction of the world's population. And in fact, even a tiny fraction of those who are even involved in higher education and on paper have the capacity to participate. So this makes it very clear to me that when we talk about an all hands on deck approach to the climate crisis, this is not a last ditch effort. It's not throwing the kitchen sink at it. There's really good evidence to suggest that civil society can be mobilized to achieve this kind of global scale impact that's needed. And as I said before, we're doing it already. Unfortunately, just not in the ways that we need to. So today is really about kind of exploring what we can do together, what kind of opportunities exist currently, and as well as the ideas that you bring to the table for being here. Some current activities that we're engaged are listed here. One of them is just growing and developing the Giant Lab itself. I'm working have been working independently, but I'm interested in kind of finding some help with doing some kind of general network building. We're doing some preparations and kind of discovery of grant opportunities to find, again, some funding for supporting these kinds of projects. We are involved in community engagement and outreach, particularly kind of through social media and building the community on JOGL itself, event planning and that sort of thing. Secondly, we are starting a program. This is kind of one of JOGL's primary ways of structuring the work of the community. It's kind of a time-bound, singular focus. In this case, we're looking at creating a global network of land restoration projects. These are it's a global decentralized network of nature-based carbon dioxide removal projects that in principle can reach the gigaton per year scale in 30 years. We also have some events coming up. Some of these are already, I think, on the JOGL calendar, and we'll be continuing to promote these over the days to come. One of them is coming up in April during Citizen Science Month. We're going to be collaborating with SciStarter. This is another kind of citizen science organization that operates out of Arizona State University, to host some events related to the work we're doing here. Also, JOGL is hosting Just One Giant Summit, I think later this summer, and we're going to be doing some activities to support that as well. And finally, we're looking just for projects themselves. If you have a current project that you think might fit or benefit from this model, we welcome you to come on to our community, to join up with our resources, discover potential collaborators, and again, connect with some of the resources that will be kind of accumulating over the months and years to come. As a first step, of course, all you need to do is maybe reach out to me. There are plenty of ways to get in touch. One of them is just to email me at patrick@jogl.io. You can also reach out to me on the JOGL platform itself or through Slack. We have several ways to reach me, or anyone also could help kind of get you to the right place if you wanted to reach out to Paige or Thomas. So again, lots of opportunities, and we are really looking forward to having you guys give your own ideas about what you can, how you can contribute. And I think to that end, we're going to now break into some breakout rooms where
I think that we've had some really interesting presentations about citizen science and examples of initiatives that people are using to address issues in their communities. So I'm going to quickly go first to Patrick. If you can just say a little bit more about yourself and your approach to citizen science and what you think are like some of the essential elements as far as citizen science is concerned.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I joined a bit late here, but just making sure you guys can all hear me. Good to go. Yeah, so again, apologies for having to share the recording, but maybe to provide a little bit more of the context that I shared in that original event. My background is in environmental science and conservation, and so citizen science has kind of always been in the background. I worked with a lot of conservation NGOs in Central and South America, and even in my own state of Florida, have been involved in a lot of kind of environmental science program and kind of wildlife monitoring. And in Florida specifically, we have a lot of issues with invasive species, and so we even crowdsource that. I mean, you know, open science broadly has a lot of kind of different facets. But I see citizen science as kind of the component that is maybe most pertinent to some of these conservation applications that I was highlighting. So this has to do more with engaging the general public. Often they're called amateurs, or again, like kind of citizen participants. These are people who may or may not have the actual skill set and kind of scientific background, but are perfectly capable of, like, you know, cleaning up litter or taking a picture of wildlife and looking at a guide and identifying things. And so many issues in conservation are just so, you know, massive in terms of the amount of work that's to be done relative to the amount of practitioners that are out there kind of invested in it. So this is a way for practitioners to kind of partner with the general public to really address some of these issues that they couldn't do on their own. So, you know, if you guys want to even try this out, there are lots of apps, iNaturalist and all these kind of like eBird, you know, apps where you can just kind of take pictures of wildlife in your local surroundings. Even that can really go a long way in supporting science. So yeah, a lot of opportunities, and again, just a really critical part, I think, of how we're doing conservation work and addressing kind of climate issues these days. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Patrick. We have a question for our various panelists, so everybody feel free to take a stab at it. This from Dr. Pallavi Pant. She's asking that, what are some of the lessons that you've learned from your work that you think that everybody who wants to start a citizen science project should know? So maybe we can go to Fred and then maybe Sean.
Yeah, for lessons learned, at first when I started this project, I thought it was more like rocket science. I need special skills. I need to engage like people who have some kind of education level. But I got into it and I realized all what you need is people with motivation. You don't necessarily need people with experience. Everyone can join, can contribute to citizen science. The most important thing is the person should be motivated to pick up a course. That's the basic lessons I've learned from this citizen science program.
Brilliant, thank you. And Sean?
Hey, one of the things that I've learned is that I find the tools and society's capacity is quite underdeveloped. So no nation has successfully ran a huge nationwide citizen science campaign. That's something that's waiting to happen. I thought it would be a lot faster. So I find it's a very exciting time to get involved with citizen science and to try and be a leader in your community and to run these events and get active in running new campaigns where they haven't been run before. Because we all need to start joining those dots and having days and weeks throughout the year when there's huge global gatherings where everyone collects a little bit of data in their local community. So right now I found that a lot of projects are very sporadic and spread out across different regions and time zones. And there's not a huge amount of cross-fertilization and the same thing happening in the same place. So ironically, citizen science needs lessons from the traditional science. You know, even though citizen science is disrupting traditional ways of collecting data, there's still a lot that citizen science can learn from the sampling approach and collecting more statistically significant data. So some of the data you'll find, it's not always of good quality. And but we also have to remember that we're at a time when society's data collection capacity is still very low. So we have yet to train people effectively. So I would love to see more events done and more workshops done, and it's all positive stepping stones in the right direction. But I think as a society, to take it a huge step forward, it needs to become like a subject in school. So I think that's something that we should all be advocating for in our different pockets of the world. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Patrick, do you want to add something to this? What are some of the lessons from your own experience working on citizen science projects for new people starting in citizen science?
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe to echo what Sean was saying is citizen science is not a panacea. It's not a lot of the potential that's there hasn't been fully realized, and he kind of hinted at some of the reasons for that. And something, I guess, maybe more of like a pitfall that I would kind of caution people against. You know, if you are entrusting the public with some of these responsibilities, there are, you know, a lot of circumstances in which it really is important to supplement that with kind of responsible project management. So having someone with a bit more experience, you know, kind of managing those things, that's really important. Obviously, when you're engaging with other communities. So, you know, the citizen science model is being applied much more broadly, even in kind of like public services and things like that for government. And, you know, when you're doing that and you're bringing people into a community where maybe, you know, maybe the trust isn't there, and there are all sorts of kind of risks involved with, you know, invasions of privacy or just not doing something kind of responsibly or you know, or even forming kind of dependence relationships that can't be sustained. These are all sorts of things that still need to be kind of anticipated and mitigated against. So yeah, training is a big part of it. Another thing is just if you're going to be involving the public, try to resist the temptation to turn this just into an engine of generating revenue. This is something that's becoming really common in the conservation field, is something called voluntourism. So a lot of people that create these opportunities, they're not as interested in the science or the impact as they are just kind of generating income. So the volunteers will actually come in, pay a lot of money to do some science, to get their hands dirty, but the data will be mismanaged. It'll just kind of, get tossed out at the end of it. So again, just there needs to be kind of more infrastructure, more kind of responsible project management at the kind of top end of it. But yeah, lots of potential, but lots of pitfalls as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so there was also another question in the chat, which was specifically for Frederick. So the question is that, how has been your experience with respect to use of local languages versus English in your work?
Yeah, okay. So basically, we use the local language for all our demonstration. The idea is we train them to be able to understand the basic concepts. So we don't want to complicate things. We use the basic, the local language for all our demonstrations.
So how's that experience been like for you? Because I mean, well, I've been a teacher in Ghana before, and there's sometimes a challenge of when you are talking to people, especially in informal contexts, there's always a challenge of capturing terminology and, terminology, for example, in the local language. So do you have any challenges like that, and how do you overcome them?
Yeah, sometimes it's a challenge to use some of the to translate some of the words into the local language. But I think basically, yeah, we are able to explain to them in such a way they will be able to understand. Sometimes you may have to blend it a little bit with the English. Yeah, but at the end of the day, understanding is the most important thing. So we are able to demonstrate in a way they can understand.
Fantastic. So at this point, I just want to announce that this is an open chat and an open discussion. So if somebody wants to contribute, feel free to use the raise hand feature and I'll call you. And if you'd rather type your question, also feel free to put your question in the chat, and then I will put your question to our speakers. Yeah, there's already a question. So the question is coming from Isaac. He says that on the issue of quality of data collected during the citizen science project, what measures or models have you found useful? I think this one goes to Sean. Sean, do you mind taking this question on the issue of data quality? How do you control for data quality?
Yeah, sorry. So what we do at Open Litter Map is when a new user signs up and submits photos, before that information and data is visible on the map, we have a screening process and we manually verify the photo that was uploaded and the tags next to it. And we have done that over like 200,000 times. So we have like a small team of admins and they carefully inspect every photo and every image. And this helps us make sure that not only is our data public friendly and there's no bad data being uploaded and people trying to abuse the system, but all of the data has been reviewed and approved and sometimes edited and updated. So when you download the Open Litter Map data, you have some confidence that it is true and legitimate and it is what it says it is. So many other litter apps, they don't actually upload the photo as well. They just allow the user to input whatever tags they like and then press upload. So there's no verification check. There's no validity. It's very difficult to trust that data. But what we've done is we've built up a very large image data set with all of these tags that have been manually reviewed. And that's not only giving us our data better integrity, But we also now have this massive data set to train a machine learning model that can automatically detect the litter in the images, which we wouldn't have if we didn't get those photographs. So for that reason, we base all of our data on a photographic source of truth. So when you tell us there was 10 plastic bottles found in your playground, then we know for a fact that there was, because we can count them. So that's given us our data a lot of legitimacy, and had the extra bonus of having good quality data then to train the open litter AI. That's an AI that's coming that we're working on to train, that will automatically detect what litter is in each photo. That's something that's in development. But then once you've been doing it for long enough, you become a trusted user. So all of our super users, we have people who use this app every day. They pick up litter and their local communities or on their beaches, and they record. They not just pick it up, but they record every single cigarette butt and plastic bottle that they've picked up. So they're building up a record of pollution, but also of their positive environmental impact on the environment. And they're quantifying that, and they're using it for fun to compete against their friends and show, look what the effort I've made in my community, and be proud of the work that would otherwise be lost in history and lost in time is now recorded and there for the world to see. So it's like writing an entry into a shared book. And if you were to just pick up this litter, that entry would be lost and your record wouldn't be there anymore. But now it's like writing something into this global environmental book, and every citizen science record adds to that book, and it's like Wikipedia. It makes it stronger and better quality. So that's been a very helpful way for us. But once a user has uploaded long enough, we set their trusted value to true, and they skip that verification process. So a lot of our super users, they don't have to go through that manual review process. It's mostly just for newcomers, and until you achieve a verified status in the app, in the system, until then you need to be reviewed.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. We also had a raised hand from Martin Mensa. Martin, would you like to open your mic and then ask your question?
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks to other presenters. I wanted a clarity. I think Sean possibly touched on it in the last part. Sean, with those who upload their litter, should say, or data in your system, is it after they have cleaned or just by spotting the presence of these litters around? Which is which? Do they have to just yeah?
It's both. Some people only record the litter they pick up. Some people, most of our users are dedicated litter pickers, and they go out every day and they pick up hundreds of bits of litter, and they want to fix this problem, and they know that if I just pick this up, it's just going to be there again tomorrow. So I need to collect data and create visibility, and then use those maps and those tools to teach people, like, look what I'm finding every day, and then work with the government and local policymakers. So most of our litter gets picked up, but sometimes people, they don't have the time to pick it up. So I might be waiting for the bus and I'll see all this broken glass. If the bus comes, I don't have time to get on my knees and pick up all this broken glass if I'm, on my way to a meeting. But I can take a photo, and then someone else can use that data. So with our app, it's a data collection app. You can record if the litter is still there or if you picked it up. So people use both, but 99% of our data gets picked up. But if you don't have time to pick it up, you can still record that real world observation as well, and say that you haven't picked it up yet, but you can use it as a data collection instrument too, if you don't have the time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
So yeah, quick question for Patrick. I think that we've kind of touched a little bit on this issue of challenges that citizen science or community-oriented projects face. But I think from your experience, can you expand on some of the possible challenges that citizen science projects face, and how can some of the challenges that maybe you've experienced yourself, how can they be properly addressed?
Yeah, it's tricky. A lot of it's going to depend on kind of the local circumstances. I mean, a lot of my experience is coming from working with kind of local conservation NGOs, largely in the Peruvian Amazon region. And one of the models that's really common there is that there will be an organization that has other conservation initiatives that are, these are the ones that are being funded by the big donors, or this kind of more high profile, and then the volunteer programs or the citizen science opportunities will be more of these kind of supplemental activities that are either reinforcing those initiatives or even generating extra incomes that is then kind of directed into funding those into those other initiatives. So one model that I've found that was in the process of being enacted in my region is that there was an organization that was starting to notice that a lot of these volunteer programs were generating a bunch of data and collecting data on the same kind of groups of animals, so mammals, birds, reptiles and amphibians. They all had kind of similar monitoring protocols, but they all had their own little nuances. They're all they're little differences and different kind of quality control procedures and that sort of thing. And so what they started to do is they started to get a lot of these different organizations into a broader network, and then create kind of standardization that each of these organizations could then adopt. They could sign on and say, okay, now I'm a member of this network. I'm going to use the same protocols when I'm doing mammal monitoring or bird monitoring. And then all that data is going to be kind of stored in this kind of data sharing network. So having someone kind of even like a third party come along and recognize that there's this opportunity, that there are these entities that need to be networked and need to be supported with the infrastructure. Being able to link up to those organizations who are providing that missing piece, I think can be really critical and can really help take something that is going to be super low quality without it and kind of raise it, up to that higher level of quality that we're going for. So, this is an ecosystem that's kind of emerging organically, but these things are happening. There are organizations who are coming in and filling in these holes. It's just a matter of going out and looking for them and making sure that you're kind of taking advantage of the opportunities that exist.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Frederick and Sean, you guys have done a lot of projects. You've talked a lot about education and curriculum and encouraging young people and getting them into participate in the citizen science. So, do you have propositions on exactly how this can be carried on as far as the formal school system is concerned? Or are there any experiments that you can point us to in terms of examples of how the capacity of the next generation in environmental stewardship is being built already?
Let me take that first. There's a lot that you can do right now. Some citizen science, like I would need training to collect data on bugs. I would need Frederick to come and teach me. And I would love to do that. I would love to have that opportunity to learn with an expert and to learn about the local environment and to collect data on more plants and animals. But if you don't have access to that training and you're not sure how to get started with bugs, a very nice entry point is to start with litter and plastic pollution. So you can check out our website, openlittermap.com, and you can sign up as yourself, or you can create a team. So if you're interested, create a team on the app. You can download it for iOS and Android, and you get like a code you can share with your friends, and they can join your team. And you can compete against all of the other teams and start today. You don't need any other tools other than a smartphone to collect geotagged photographs. So you turn your location services on, and there's instructions to do this when you sign up as a user. And keep our global map open during the day, and you'll see live events of people signing up, creating new teams, uploading photos from around the world. And every time you see a notification of a photo, you can double tap it and zoom right to where that photo was taken. So that's a really good starting point. And as more opportunities like for training with Frederick come up and others, take them, because you will learn. You will never look at the environment or the streets or the forests or the air or the stars the same way ever again when you start getting involved with citizen science, because you become a knowledge producer. You get the same ability to create knowledge as only a small number of people had access to not that long ago. So 50 years ago, only carefully trained experts were allowed to create this data. And now we have all been given an opportunity to create the same levels of data. And this will totally transform our knowledge about the world and our ability to measure it and understand it. But whatever about the data you collect, you going out there and interacting with your environment, that's a very powerful thing. And that's why citizen science is climate action, because I can't show you a CO2 molecule, but I can teach you, or someone like Frederick, we can teach you about, and you can teach yourself about, the bugs outside in your garden, the age of the trees, how early is spring happening this year, when are flowers starting to bloom, when do the birds arrive, when do they leave, what type of insects are they feeding on. We don't have a handle on any of this yet, really, but we will begin to start unlocking society's data collection capacity soon, hopefully. So there's a lot you can do, but I would encourage you to start with litter, but then venture out and try and do the more complicated stuff, like the biodiversity monitoring. So full respect to the guys who can facilitate that, because I haven't cracked that nut yet. So you guys have a lot to teach me still, but I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about in the future.
Yeah. Frederick, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think basically citizen science is not entirely new. We are already doing a lot in schools. They are already teaching the kids, they are demonstrating. But I think everything we are discussing boils down to the data quality, like Patrick and then Sean has already discussed. So now what we need to do is to train people, a lot of people who will be available to control the quality of data we are producing from this citizen science project. If we have a lot of people to keep track, to check this type of data we are generating, then I think we are already on the perfect track. Okay.
Awesome. Okay, so there's also the question about the use of technology. I mean, Sean has spoken extensively about how he uses mapping, GIS. I'm quite curious, like what other forms of technology do you use in your work, Patrick and Frederick? And also, what do you think is the main effect of technology as far as access to science at the grassroots level is concerned?
Yeah, in terms of technology, I would say the basic concept of all this science research we are doing is to be able to transfer knowledge, is to be able to communicate with people what we are getting. So with technology, like the litter map, like the iNaturalist, the data I get right from maybe my backyard, I can communicate to the wider world, and then they will know what we have in here. So we always deploy a lot of researchers into the field to collect data, but actually we have enough data which we can use for most of our research. So if we have a lot of with the influence of this technological advancements, we can already start sharing our data, and then we don't necessarily have to spend much resources in collecting new data. Yeah.
Yeah, I think something that's come out probably from all these presentations is cell phones have been a huge part of kind of enabling different applications of citizen science, from the mapping of litter to biodiversity to even kind of crowd mapping, kind of crisis mapping activities. I don't know if that's been talked about at all. I think Sean's project may have been inspired by OpenStreetMap. Is that what I remember reading? So, there's so many applications, and smartphones are very often at the center of it. There are kind of SMS text-based versions, kind of lower fidelity kind of versions of all these technologies that are still able to be used in areas where the cell coverage is not so advanced. You know, things that would help journalists report on violence from the government, for instance, those sorts of things. But you know, having that kind of supercomputer in the palm of your hand has been huge. I think kind of what this is also doing is kind of laying a foundation for more advanced, you know, incorporation of even like open source hardware and that sort of thing. And a lot of people are starting to use kind of the Raspberry Pi and these kind of really simple, you know, circuit boards and kind of 3D printer, those kinds of things that you can use even in your local library or own yourself. And people are using those to create kind of environmental sensors that are super low cost. Up in Pittsburgh, where I used to live, we have air quality issues, and you know, a researcher at our university was just distributing a bunch of these really low cost sensors for people to just mount on the sides of their house and track air quality. There's a group called the Public Lab, which does this on a really large scale, and they do, they even create like kind of hot air balloons to fly over kind of high pollution areas, or even monitor kind of you know, factories that are polluting or maybe dumping you know, pollutants into the water systems, and can kind of even do kind of this watchdog you know, effect, kind of create this accountability for the private sector. And I guess one last example is we also have some local bee species, for instance, that have recently gone into decline in the United States. And so people are even starting to create little homes and kind of setting these homes out in different fields, and then coming collecting them and networking all those houses, so that you know, the people who are kind of managing these populations can track the different populations of bees in different areas, or even kind of create new habitats. So I mean, it's kind of branching out and exploding. It's really about kind of, you know, innovating on the technology that we have, but it's always kind of growing and advancing, and there's a lot of cool stuff happening.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for not only sharing about the technology, but the foresight as far as the future of citizen science is concerned. So my final question is to you, Frederick, and indeed to anybody who's on the call who wants to contribute, because I always love for everybody to contribute. Is so what are the prospects for citizen science in Africa going forward? Considering what we discussed
in terms of Africa, I think I've already seen a lot of prospects with this citizen science, not specifically in Ghana, but if you check online, you see a lot of projects being carried out in the East Africa on citizen science. Yeah, for instance, there was a particular project on the tea time on Mountain Kilimanjaro, which was one of the genesis of these citizen science projects in Africa. But yeah, for Ghana, we've started promoting this citizen science, and then anytime I go to the field, I see the kind of zeal, the kind of excitement in this kids' eyes, the participants. So it's like, it's quite simple, it's quite fun, and everyone wants to get involved. So I think with this drive, the prospect is really huge in the near future.
Thank you very much, Frederick. Does anybody else want to add another point? There's a last question that is here. I think that we'll probably take this question as a reflection question. Somebody is asking about, so many people use smartphones in Ghana, same way in developed countries. How do you bridge the gap in terms of collecting data and taking into consideration language barriers? So this is like a big question. The same question comes up in conversations around when we talk about science communication. The same question comes up. How do you bridge the education gap, or how do you bridge the language gap? You know, very, very, very important and crucial question. I think that we can look at this question later on, maybe in the context of the Just One Giant Summit, which we are all invited to be part of. I think that Sean is keen to say something, so I'll invite you to.
Hey guys, Open Letter Map is already available on the web. It's in 5 languages, and on the app it's in like 7 or 8. I'll have to check. But if anyone wants this translated into another language, please get in touch if you want to help, and we will send you the files. And if you just have to translate all of the text into whatever language, if it's not there yet. And we would love to accommodate more languages. and get more people interested in it and in Open Letter Map and making a real contribution. So if you want to see it in any other language, or you know anyone who can help, please reach out, because we would love to get it into as many languages as possible. And all the code is open source, so we'll show you as well how it works and how it's used. And you might even find a new passion for coding. If that's something you might find interesting, also get in touch with us.
Thank you very much, Sean. So I just want to share a few words about Just One Giant Lab. So basically, Just One Giant Lab, it's all about community driven science and innovation. We have our online platform that hosts projects and that hosts organizations that use science and technology to address some of the crucial problems of our time. And since it's a global platform, we bring together over 7,000 innovators. And the idea behind our platform, it's really about the same principles that govern citizen science, for example, which is that how do we involve everybody in the research and innovation process, such that we address issues that are important to society, such that the solutions that can actually solve the problems are developed. And so we not only bring together top-notch researchers, innovators, entrepreneurs, civil servants, but also engage students, ordinary people on our platform. And we support building of ecosystems and communities to address the issues that matter. And so basically, it's a tech platform. So you can check us out at app.jogl.io, but also a community that is developing different programs to address challenges around the world. In Africa, we started the JOGL Africa initiative since last year. So we've been hosting communities like Mbwa Lab. I'm hoping we can, for example, bring Forest Aid Ghana on board as well. We mobilize thematic communities as well, and then we co-develop programs. One of the programs we've worked on since last year is the Africa Against Antimicrobial Resistance Initiative, for example, where we are looking at how do we build capacity and build a community around antimicrobial resistance to be able to address it. And so I'd just like to share with you a few of these things that we've been doing, and hope that you come on board and collaborate with us going forward. This year, we are putting together various events that might be of interest to you as far as capacity building is concerned. We've talked about interest in addressing plastic pollution. We are interested in working on air pollution, and also to continue with our work on antimicrobial resistance. Today's session, marking Citizen Science Month, is one of these events that we've been able to put together, and going forward, we'll be looking at other interesting topics, for example, around biosafety and biosecurity. So in a nutshell, would like to invite you and your organizations to join JOGL to take advantage of our spaces feature. We are planning to have a fellowship opportunity for various researchers and innovators that want to tackle specific issues. The information on that will be shared during the course of the year. So please be on the lookout for that. And of course, we'll be having more events and activities, and therefore would like to invite you to join. One of the main events that we'll be having this year, which will be on July 1st, is a Just One Giant Summit. I already dropped a link in the chat. Basically, we are bringing together all the communities, all the projects, all the initiatives that are interested in the community approach to science and innovation to exchange on the opportunities, the challenges in this space, and create a common platform for fostering collaboration on those topics. And therefore, please check out the link in the chat and sign up for an opportunity to lead a track, or if you are just interested in attending the summit or you want to volunteer in some way, feel free to email me or email the JOGL team as well, so that we can get back to you with more information. So I'd just like to use this opportunity to thank all of you for staying with us throughout the course of today's program. It's been a fantastic event. We've learned so much from our esteemed speakers. Frederick, Sean, Patrick, thank you so much for allowing us to tap into your experience and your world of wisdom. It's been very great, and thank you very much, indeed.